Do you really believe you need to work harder to make a lot of money? What if I told you that's a lie you've believed your whole life? It's not physical exertion that will make you rich. It's not working 12 hours a day. It's not having 3 jobs. It's a secret habit, forbidden to most, that transforms anyone into a legend. Most people will die without ever discovering it. I discovered it, and that's why my life changed completely. You grew up hearing that to make money, you need to work hard, study hard, wake up early and kill yourself working, right? But I want you to stop now and ask yourself a question. How many people do you know who follow this formula exactly and remain in debt, exhausted with no time for anything? How many people do you know who spend their entire lives chasing money, believing that physical effort is the key but never get there? That's how most people live. And do you know why? Because that's one of the biggest lies ever told to you. I believed it too. I believed it until the day I found myself at rock bottom, broke, without prospects, without anything that made me believe my life could change. I was broke, dropped out of school early, had no diploma, no plan. I cleaned floors, mopped floors to survive. Maybe you understand what that's like. Looking at your life and thinking, is this all there is? And believing there's no way out, because that's exactly how I felt. Until something happened. A friend gave me a book and along with it gave me advice that changed everything. If you do exactly what I tell you, your life will change. I had nothing to lose, so I decided to follow it to the letter. And guess what happened? In 1 year, I went from an income of $4,000 a year to $175,000. In less than 5 years, I was making over $1 million. And do you know what the first thing I thought was? How did this happen? How did someone like me without education, without experience achieve this? And I'll tell you, it wasn't because I got smarter. It wasn't because I worked longer hours. It wasn't because someone gave me a chance. It was because I developed a habit that almost nobody knows. A mental habit that changes everything. I started thinking like the rich before I was rich. Sounds simple. It might even sound crazy. But that's the secret. The way you think determines your reality. I changed my way of thinking, and my reality had to change to align with it. Now let me ask you a question. When you wake up in the morning, what's the first thing you think about? Is it the overdue bill, the invoice due tomorrow, the salary that's not enough for the month? If that's the case, you're already starting the day vibrating scarcity. And do you know what scarcity attracts? More scarcity. It's like you're trapped in an endless cycle, reinforcing every day the lack, the limitation, the idea that there's no way out. What if I told you that a simple change in your thinking is enough to break that? I know it may sound strange. When they told me that, I doubted it too, but I decided to test it. I started acting as if I were already rich. I'm not talking about going out and spending money you don't have. I'm talking about mindset. I asked myself every day, if I were already the person I want to be, how would I think? How would I act? How would I speak? And then I started behaving that way. Small things, how I dressed, how I presented myself, how I talked about money. And guess what happened? Opportunities started to appear. People started to notice me. My behavior changed and the world responded to it. Maybe now you're thinking, but that's just positive thinking. No, it's not. Positive thinking alone doesn't change anything. You need to create a new mental pattern and repeat that pattern every day until it becomes a habit. That's what changes your paradigm, because what controls your life today is not your willpower, not your intelligence, not your effort. It's your paradigm, a set of beliefs and habits that you don't even realize you have, but that determine your results. When I discovered this, it was as if I had found gold. Because I realized that everything I had been taught was wrong. I didn't need to work longer hours. I didn't need more diplomas. I needed to change my mind, and that's what almost nobody does. People want to change their lives. but they keep thinking the same way. And when you think like a poor person, you create more poverty. When you think like a rich person, you create wealth. It's that simple. Now, I want to propose a challenge to you. For the next 7 days, when you wake up, ask yourself, if I were already rich, what would I do today? And act according to that answer. Maybe it's something small, changing the way you dress for work, changing the way you talk about money, changing the way you treat people. But do it every day for 7 days and observe what happens, because I can guarantee you one thing. When you change the way you see yourself, the whole world changes the way it treats you. And that's what separates ordinary people from people who become legends. People are afraid of this word, obsession. They think that being obsessed with something is bad, dangerous, something for unbalanced people. But I'll tell you a truth that might shock you. Everyone who has built something extraordinary had an obsession. No ordinary person does something great without being obsessed with what they want. I discovered this the hard way. When I started changing my life, I realized that I couldn't simply try. I couldn't just give my best when I had time. I couldn't have one foot in the goal and the other in failure. I had to dive in head first. I had to think, breathe, and live what I wanted. While others were watching TV, I was reading. While others were distracted by other people's problems, I repeated the same ideas in my mind thousands of times. I would take a phrase and record it until it entered my subconscious. And do you know why? Because that's how the mind works, through repetition. It's repetition that creates new neural pathways, that transforms a thought into a habit. I remember spending entire nights listening to recordings. I would listen to them in the car, in my room, at work, always. I had a goal so clear that nothing took me off track. And guess what? That scared some people. They said, "You only talk about this now." Yes, I only talked about it because I wanted to change my life. And whoever is not willing to be obsessed will never achieve anything great. Now tell me, do you have something that consumes you in a way that you would do anything to achieve it? Or are you living from distraction to distraction without any force pulling you forward? The truth is that if you don't have a healthy obsession with what you want, you'll end up living someone else's obsession. Maybe your boss's, maybe your company's, maybe society's, which wants you to be just another one. Look at the people you admire. Elite athletes, artists, entrepreneurs, they all have something in common: obsession. Michael Jordan was obsessed with training more than anyone else. Elon Musk was obsessed with building companies that would change the world. None of them got where they are because they tried a little. And I know what you're thinking, but isn't that too much? What if I fail? I'll tell you one thing. You're already failing when you don't fully commit to anything. The biggest risk is not trying and losing. The biggest risk is spending your whole life without ever having given everything for something that really mattered to you. Now I want to give you a simple challenge. Choose a goal that you've been putting off. It can be financial, personal, or spiritual. And for 30 days, make it your healthy obsession. Read about it every day. Talk about it. Write about it. Imagine it. Let it consume you in a way that nothing else consumes you. And see what happens. Because I'll tell you, the world doesn't belong to those who dream. The world belongs to those who transform their dreams into an obsession that doesn't stop until it becomes reality. Have you ever stopped to think that perhaps the biggest prison in your life has no bars, no locks, no walls? The biggest prison is the identity you assumed to please others. I lived like that for years, trying to be who I thought people expected me to be, and maybe that's exactly what's preventing you from being who you really want to be. I grew up believing that I needed to follow a script, work hard, pay bills, survive. That was it. There was no room to dream, to take risks, to do something different. I was trapped in the idea that I can't disappoint others. And do you know what the consequence was? I disappointed myself every day. One day I heard a phrase that shook me. If I want to be free, I have to be myself. Not the self that I think others want me to be. Not the self that my family thinks I should be. Not the self that my friends expect. But the real me. That hit me like lightning, because I realized I had no idea who I was. I only knew who I was pretending to be, and maybe that's happening to you now. Maybe you're in a job you hate, but you stay there because you're afraid of what your family will think. Maybe you hide your true dreams because you think they'll laugh at you. Maybe you dress, speak, think and act in a way that's not yours, just so you don't bother anyone. But answer me. Until when? Until when will you live a life that is not yours? I learned the hard way that nothing changes until you have the courage to be who you really are. Because every time you force yourself to fit into the expectations of others, you move away from what could be your real life. The greatest tragedy is not failing to try to be yourself. The greatest tragedy is succeeding as someone you never wanted to be. And here's a truth no one likes to hear. Other people's opinions don't pay your bills, don't fulfill your dreams, don't live your life. So why do they hold so much power over you? When I realized this, it was like a weight lifted off my shoulders. I decided I wouldn't try to please anyone anymore. And you know what happened? My life exploded with opportunities. I started working on what I loved, earning more money than ever before, feeling truly alive, because finally I was being myself. Want proof of how powerful this is? Look at Steve Jobs. He was fired from his own company because he refused to conform to expectations. And when he returned, he created the iPhone, one of the most revolutionary products in history. Imagine if he'd thought, better not to rock the boat, better to follow the rules. The world would be a very different place. Now, I want you to ask yourself, who are you truly, and who have you been pretending to be? It's an uncomfortable question, I know, but it's the only one that will set you free. If you're waiting for a sign to start living your life on your own terms, that sign is now. Because if you keep trying to please everyone, you'll end up disappointing the most important person in your life, yourself. I spent years believing I wasn't good enough, and maybe you know exactly how that feels. I looked at myself and thought, I have no education, no intelligence, nothing that can take me far. I believed life had been unfair to me, that others were luckier, better prepared, more capable. And you know what's worse? I believed it so strongly that I actively searched for proof that it was true. If I tried something and it didn't work, I'd tell myself, see, you're not capable. If someone succeeded, I'd think, they can, I can't. And the more I repeated this, the more it became my reality. Because that's how it works. The mind will always confirm what you believe. For a long time, I carried the shame of dropping out of school. I'd only attended a few months of high school. No diploma, no experience. I worked jobs that required nothing but physical labor because I believed that was all I could offer. I didn't dream because I thought dreaming was for other people, and maybe you feel that way too. Maybe you think you don't have enough talent, that you're too old to try something new, that you need more time, more money, more approval to get started. But I want you to understand something right now. That's a lie. The only thing separating you from what you want is the belief that you can't have it. Want proof? Look at Thomas Edison. He was called retarded in school. Walt Disney was fired because they said he lacked creativity. These people didn't let other people's opinions define who they were. They chose to believe in themselves when no one else did. I had to do that too. And I'll tell you something, it wasn't easy. When you spend years telling yourself you're not good enough, changing that is like swimming against a strong current. But I started swimming. Every day I repeated to myself that I could, even when everything seemed to say otherwise. I surrounded myself with books, audio programs, and quotes that reminded me that I had untapped potential. And gradually, something started to change. You know the biggest difference between those who succeed and those who give up. It's not intelligence. It's not luck. It's believing when there's no reason to believe. It's acting as if you're already capable, even when everything around you says you're not. Now I want you to reflect. How many opportunities have you missed because you thought you weren't ready? How many doors haven't you knocked on because you believed they would slam in your face? What if I told you that the doors are open to those who have the courage to enter? Today, I want you to do something simple. Write down 3 things you think you're not capable of doing, and then write next to each one, "This is just a belief, not a truth." Carry that paper with you. Read it whenever doubt creeps in. Because when you understand that the limitation is only in your mind, you begin to break invisible chains. Remember this. You don't have to be perfect to begin. You just need to believe you can, because when you believe, you act. And when you act, you prove to yourself that you've always been capable. I'll let you in on a secret that, at first, seemed crazy to me, a fact so strange that I doubted it. But when I understood it, my life changed forever. And you might find it strange too when you hear it now. We tend to minimize what we can do and overestimate others. Think about it. How many times have you looked at someone successful and thought they succeed because they're special, because they're lucky, because they were born with a gift? Now be honest, how many times have you looked at yourself and said, "I can't. This isn't for me"? I did that my whole life. I believed others were capable, and I wasn't. And that kept me trapped for years in a mediocre life. Until one day, I heard something that seemed simple, but was profound. It was in a recording I'd listened to thousands of times. You have deep reserves of talent and ability within you. I'd heard this more than 1,000 times before I truly understood it, because knowing isn't the same as believing. I knew the words, but I didn't believe them. It was only when it entered my subconscious that everything changed. Because here's the truth. You have within you a potential so great that if you saw it now, you'd be shocked. But that potential is dormant because you believe more in your limitations than in your possibilities. Now, maybe you're thinking, but how do I get this into my mind? The answer is simple but powerful. Repetition. It's repetition that creates new pathways in your mind. I didn't change my life because I heard a nice phrase. I changed because I heard the same idea until it became a part of me. I wrote it, I read it, I repeated it every day. What did I do? I wrote affirmations like, "I am prosperous, healthy, and abundant," 10 times a day. At first, it seemed ridiculous. I felt like an idiot. But do you know what happened? Repetition began to reprogram my mind, because the mind doesn't distinguish between what's real and what's imagined when you repeat it with emotion. It accepts it as truth. And when the mind accepts it, your reality changes. Do you think this is just motivational talk? Then look at what science says. Neuroscientists have proven that positive affirmations activate areas of the brain linked to reward and self-control. They literally create new neural connections. In other words, you can train your brain to believe something until it becomes natural for you. Now answer me, how many times do you repeat every day that you're not capable, that it won't work, that you don't have money? That's repetition too. That also creates mental habits, but habits that destroy you. So why not use that same force in your favor? Today, I want you to do something that will seem crazy, but it works. Write this sentence 10 times right now. I am prosperous, healthy, and abundant. And repeat it every day for 30 days, without fail. Do this and see how your mind begins to change, because when you change on the inside, everything changes on the outside. Remember this, the secret isn't wanting. The secret is conditioning your mind to believe. And when it believes, it creates. There was a time when I was so afraid to express myself that I avoided even asking simple questions. If there were 5 people in a room, I wouldn't raise my hand. I'd stay quiet, silent, hidden. And you know what it felt like? It was like I was trapped inside myself. I wanted to speak, I wanted to share ideas, but fear paralyzed me. The fear of seeming stupid, the fear of judgment, the fear of what others would think. Maybe you understand what that's like. Maybe you've swallowed words because you were afraid of the reaction. Maybe you've missed opportunities because you didn't have the courage to speak up. And I ask you, how many times have you stopped yourself from experiencing something incredible because of fear? I lived this way for years, until one day something happened that changed everything. I was at the back of the room at a huge event with more than 1,000 people. The speaker was Bill Gove, considered one of the greatest in the world. He was up front with a microphone in his hand, walking across the stage, speaking with a confidence, with a presence, with an energy that hypnotized everyone. I looked at him and thought, my God, if I could do that, if I could speak like that. And suddenly he said something that hit me like lightning. If I want to be free, I have to be myself, not the self I think others want me to be. If I want to be free, I have to be myself. At that moment I understood. I wasn't trapped because I lacked talent. I was trapped because I was afraid to show who I really was. I realized that if I wanted to be free, I would have to conquer that fear. And I made a decision right then and there. I was going to learn to speak. I was going to learn to express myself. I was going to break free from this prison. I sought out Bill Gove and asked him to teach me. That's how it all began. It wasn't quick. It wasn't easy. At first I trembled, I sweated, I stuttered, but I kept going. I continued until I became someone who speaks to crowds, to thousands of people around the world. And I want you to understand something. I'm no different from you. If I could do it, you can too, because fear is an illusion. It only has power when you believe in it. When you act even in the face of fear, it loses its power. Now tell me, what would you stop losing if you weren't afraid? How many doors would open if you had the courage to express yourself? How many opportunities have you missed because you stayed silent? Today, I challenge you. For the next 7 days, whenever you feel that fear of speaking up, do the opposite. Open your mouth. Express yourself. Do it at work, with friends, with strangers, because every time you face that fear, it shrinks. Every time you avoid it, it grows. Remember, your voice holds power. But it only transforms your life when you choose to use it. The day you conquer your fear of self-expression is the day the world begins to hear who you truly are. There comes a point when you realize that hard work isn't enough. I know this firsthand. When I was still finding my way, I spent hours changing oil, lubricating machinery, doing whatever came my way. At the end of the day, I'd look at my wallet and barely have enough to cover my bills. It was frustrating, discouraging, and honestly, I started believing that life was just like that. But here's something nobody tells you. How you manage money is more important than how much you earn. I realized this when I decided to deeply study people's relationship with money. Research shows that most people live in constant financial stress, not because of a lack of opportunities, but because of mental habits that sabotage their finances. Fear of investing, procrastination, blaming the system, or even avoiding conversations about money. I've fallen into these traps myself. I confess it took months of anxiety and sleepless nights before I truly understood. Money is a reflection of the mind, not the market. I did an exercise that changed my life. I took a whole week and wrote down every negative thought I had about money. Every time I told myself, this is impossible or I'll never achieve this, I wrote it down. In the end, I realized my mind was full of blocks I didn't even know existed. By replacing those thoughts with powerful affirmations, my reality began to transform, and this wasn't theory, it was practice. Today, thousands of people use the same method. and report concrete financial changes within a few months. Have you noticed how people who don't master this practice end up missing incredible opportunities? Think of public figures who have faced bankruptcy or financial scandals simply because they lacked control over their abundance mindset. Meanwhile, others, Bill Gates, Oprah Winfrey, not only became wealthy, but built lasting legacies because they understood that before you earn money, you must learn to think like the wealthy. Here's your challenge. For the next 14 days, record every thought you have about money, unfiltered, every doubt, fear, or inner criticism. At the end of each day, transform those thoughts into positive affirmations and vividly visualize a life of abundance happening now. Do this, and you'll feel such a powerful internal shift that your external behavior will begin to reflect wealth, opportunities, and confidence. The secret is simple, but few dare to apply it. Before you change your bank balance, change your mind. And believe me, when that happens, you'll see money, opportunities, and success rushing towards you like never before. Remember, the most powerful point of all we've shared here is that transformation begins within you. The moment you decide to challenge your own beliefs and take control of your mind. This is the secret that separates those who remain ordinary from those who become true legends. And now, as you process all of this, there's a next video that will take you another step up in your wisdom evolution. In it, you'll discover insights that can make you 1% better than you are now, further elevating your perspective on money, success, and life. Thank you for being here with me, absorbing each idea and allowing yourself to grow. I'll see you in the next video, ready to continue this journey of transformation together.